Hi, I'm Jason Moore for Simplifilm, and in this quick tutorial we're going to take a look at a couple of techniques for creating pixel art. Now, pixel art is a form of art that's been popular really since video games like this were in their prime, and it's still a form of art that's in use today. Pixel art requires designers to go in and create graphics at the pixel level using limited colors and shapes to achieve everything that you see in the game. Now, we here at Simplifilm just completed a project for a company called Scirra for their very powerful software package called Construct 2. Now, the thing I love about Construct 2 is it allows you to create video games without knowing how to code. So basically, a designer like me can create the graphics, put them into the application, and the application does most of the work to make the video game happen. Now, for this particular project, I had to create several retro-looking games that would have played on a machine kind of like this. And I learned a whole lot about pixel art. And today I want to share with you in this tutorial some of those things that I learned. So let's go ahead and get started. And for this tutorial, I'll be using Adobe Photoshop CC 2014. Earlier versions of Photoshop will be able to do pretty much everything you see me do here. I want to start by demonstrating one of the most popular techniques for creating pixel art. So we'll start by creating a new file, and we're going to start off with a pretty small file, 50 pixels by 50 pixels at 72 pixels per inch, and we'll just use a white background to start. Now, as I said, this is pretty small, but at the end we can blow it up to be as large as we want it to be. First thing we want to do is set up our grid. So we're going to look for preferences. On a Mac it's under Photoshop. I think on a PC it's under File. And make sure that your grid is set up, grid line is set up to every 1 pixel, and subdivisions is every 1 pixel as well. Alright, by default the grids are turned off, they're hidden. So let's go to View, Show, Grid. And every one of those little squares represents a pixel. Let's start by creating a new layer, and then I'm going to use the pencil tool. We want to set that to 1 pixel, make sure the hardness is 100%. That will allow us to draw 1 pixel at a time. I'm just going to start by grabbing kind of a peach tone here, and we'll start drawing a Mario-like character. Add a little mustache. And of course, this is just for demo purposes. You can make your character whatever you'd like for it to be. Give him a little hat. And we'll turn it backwards. Give him a little shirt now. And we'll give him some hands. Now, if you don't have this little navigator window open, go under Window and Navigator, and that kind of lets you see what your character looks like. Now, that pretty much does it for this character, and you could tweak it and do lots of other things with it. The cool thing, though, about Photoshop is that you can actually preview your animations and build frames that you can export from Photoshop for your games. We'll take a quick look at how to build a sprite. Basically, a sprite is an animated character that is made up of hand-drawn frames. So we'll call this frame 1. And then we are going to go down here and create video timeline. I'm going to click over here to create our first frame. Or we'll set this to no delay. So it's frame 1, and then we click on the new frame icon here. I'm going to duplicate frame 1. We'll just make him jump. So I'm going to move all these pixels up. Call this frame 2. Move his legs out a little bit here. Things get a little funky at this resolution. Fix his foot up a little. Move his arm out a little. And we'll do a little painting to fix up where things got a little funky. So now we're looking at frame 1 and then go to frame 2 and turn that on. And there's a very simple jump. We'll add one more frame. And we'll move up just a little bit more. I'm going to cut his legs off and borrow the legs from the first frame. Just going to rotate those sideways. Just duplicated that leg, flipped it over, and we'll put it out here. We'll combine all that together. I think we'll borrow the arms from the first pose as well. And we'll call that frame 3. Alright, so now we have frame 1 set up, frame 2, and frame 3, and then we'll actually add one more frame, which will just be a repeat of frame 2. Then, if we set this to go forever, we can preview our animation. So this is really simple, just a way to kind of show you how to create some simple pixel art. Now, when you get finished, 50 pixels by 50 pixels is pretty small, so we can resize it. So if you go to image, adjust image size, we can make it 500 pixels by 500 pixels at 300 dpi. Now the most important thing here is that you want to make sure that you choose nearest neighbor. That's going to give us hard edges and we don't lose anything in the process. So it's still going to look the way it did at 50 by 50 with those hard edges. Next, I want to show you another technique I use to create pixel art for the Construct 2 video. First, let me show you the sequence.
Your quarters and created rivalries at the pizza parlors and arcades.
So in the fictional game Coin Munchers, which is just a little silly, we've got coins going into a coin slot. And rather than have to illustrate those coins pixel by pixel, I used a technique in After Effects to kind of automate some of it. So let's take a look. We're going to bounce over to After Effects. And right now I'm using After Effects CC. And you can see here I have a 25-cent token and a 25-cent coin slot. We're going to start by creating a new adjustment layer. There's actually two variations on this that you can try. First one is to use Mosaic. I'm just going to drag that to the adjustment layer. And what that does is it affects all of the layers underneath. So let's change our values here to 200 by 200. And we're going to choose the Sharp Colors option. And it gives us a pretty nice pixelated look. Now it's a little blurry for my liking, but it doesn't do a bad job. Here's a second way to do this in After Effects. We'll turn off this adjustment layer and add a new adjustment layer. And for this one we're going to use a filter called Ball Action. Now you can see it gets very, very pixelated, but when we adjust the values, it looks pretty nice. So we're going to take the grid spacing to 3, and then ball size we're going to make 300. And it looks very similar to Mosaic, but it's got a slightly more pixel by pixel look. Now for the Construct 2 video, I actually used this as a starting point and then took it back into Photoshop to do a little bit more tweaking. You can see that I've actually done a little bit of pixel by pixel shading here just to give it a finished look. Now I'm going to show you another way to create a pixelized look for things like logos. In our video we have some fictitious games, and this is one of them. Kind of a fighter game. And you'll notice that we have the Scirra logo on the wall here. And of course we couldn't just put in a sharp vector version of it. I had to create an 8-bit version. So I want to show you how to achieve this look. So let's jump back over to Photoshop. Here's the Scirra logo. I'm going to start by duplicating that layer. And then on a new layer I'm going to create a black background. Just drag that underneath the logo. And then I'm going to use the magic wand tool to just grab the Scirra letters and icon. We'll do select inverse and then delete. And now we have it separated from the background. We're going to do select, deselect. Then what we're going to do is run the same filter that I ran in After Effects, which is the mosaic filter. So it's under Pixelate, Mosaic. I'm going to make the cell size 17. It's going to make everything really, really pixelated. I'm going to hit OK. Let's grab the magic wand tool again. This time make sure anti-alias is unchecked. And we want the tolerance to be set to 1. And what we want to do is grab all of the pixels that are semi-transparent and we're just going to delete them. So let's just delete these outside pixels here. Anything that's semi-transparent. If you hold down the shift key, you can click on multiple colors. Just hitting the delete key after I get everything selected. We won't even bother with this other R. We're just going to duplicate this R when we get it finished. I want everything to be sort of the same width. So let's get rid of this piece here in the center. And it's grabbing this little section down here. So let's switch to the marquee tool. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and then drag it up, and that deselects, and then I'm going to hit the delete key again, which gives us our R. We don't need to worry about this R. In fact, we'll just go ahead and delete it. And then let's delete all of the sections here on the A. Then we'll duplicate our R. You put this marquee tool around the R, grab the move tool and hold down Alt, and then hold down the shift key at the same time. You can drag over a copy. And this is a little tricky, but we're going to do the same thing we've done on this side with all of these semi-transparent pixels. It's kind of tough in the beginning to figure out what's what, but the more you work with this, the easier it gets. You want to kind of have a uniform look, so let's just get rid of these 2 pixels here, so that everything's kind of the same width. And then once you're done, hold down the Control key or the Command key on a Mac and click on the thumbnail, and that will outline everything. Then I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool to grab a section of this blue and to edit and fill. I want to fill with the foreground color. Click OK, and that pretty much fills it in. Now we have a couple little messy pieces here that I'm just going to delete by using the marquee tool. And there we have it. Now the last thing I want to show you is how to pixelate someone's face and make them look like an 8-bit graphic. For the beginning of the video, we had this splash screen which features the 2 co-founders of Scirra in a game based on the look of a very popular game from the 1980s. I'm going to play this little section for you and then show you how I achieved it.
Games you played growing up. Street Brawl.
Alright, let's jump back into Photoshop and we'll take a look at that graphic. Now these are the bodies that I commandeered from another source, and here's the finished version of the head that I created. I'm going to show you though how I went about creating that. Now one very handy thing to have at your disposal is the NTSC palette for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This shows all the colors that were possible. So I used that when creating this graphic. So it was just sort of there in the background. Here's a picture of Tom Gullen of Scirra, and what I'm going to do is just pull this down underneath this graphic. I've kind of already got it lined up. Unfortunately, there's no quick way to do this, and it can get a little tedious. So I will fast forward through parts of this as I'm doing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate Tom's picture here. I'm going to run that mosaic again, except this time I'm going to make it a little larger. What I want to do is match the size of the pixels here. So we're going to make it 8 pixels wide. You can see that's just about the same size as the pixels here. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to zoom back out. And now what I want to do is change the grid to match the size of these pixels. So we're going to make it 8 by 8 pixels. Click OK. Again, we want to make sure that the grid is turned on as viewable. And now when we zoom in, you can see that we have the grid lined up with our face here. So the next step is to just trace the face. I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool here to do that. Alright, so now that we have the face selected, I'm going to go down here and select this color, the skin tone. I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll call this face. And I'm going to fill that with that color. So now we've got the solid color of the face. The next step would be then to trace the hair. We'll go ahead and pick up the eyebrows and the facial hair. On some of the stuff you just have to guess a little bit. Alright, so let's create a new layer for the hair. Then we'll use our color picker here to grab this shade of reddish brown. Let's look at the two together. If we turn off Tom there, you can see that it's starting to come together. Now what we want to do is add the orange shading, and we're going to let the program help us out here a little bit on that. So what I'm going to do is take this copy of Tom's face and copy it again. Adjust the brightness and contrast. I'm going to use Legacy here. That just is the old way that this tool used to work. And we're just going to go until we get some contrast, some heavy contrast. What we're looking for here is a way to differentiate the lights from the darks. Alright, now what we're going to do is trace all of the areas that look a little darker, and we'll fill those in with this orange color. Okay, let's go back to the eyedropper tool here, and we will choose this orange color. Let's create a new layer above the face, up below the hair, and we'll go ahead and fill that in. Now let's build those layers up. Okay, let's call this layer shading. Now let's go ahead and add the eyes, and we'll use the color picker for this. So we're just going to grab one pixel here, add a new layer for eyes. So fill that blue, move the selection over, go with a lighter blue, and then we're going to do white on either side. And then we'll duplicate this layer and drag it over to right there. We'll turn all the layers back on, and now we're starting to get somewhere. Just a little bit more left. Let's define the nose a little bit. So we've got sort of a dark section here and dark section here. So we're just going to grab those, pull up our color picker here. So we'll try to choose the dark orange color. Create a new layer. All this nose shading. And actually we're going to add a highlight as well. So we'll grab this section of the nose. And there's kind of a bright spot over the eye here as well. And just a little bit here on the chin. And following suit here from the arms that are shaded, we'll add white to those areas. Now we want to define the shading above and below the eyes. So we'll turn our layer back on here. We'll do this slightly darker orange color. Could probably bring under the nose here as well, and the side of the face here. Let's turn our layer back on here, and we'll go ahead and do the lips. Create a new layer for the lips, and then we'll just shade this section over here. Alright, then the last thing we'll do is add some dark spots to the hair. And since we're about as dark as we can get, we're just going to add black. So we'll take a look here. Got some dark spots here and over here and a little bit on the top. Change this to black. We'll call this hair shading. Last thing I want to do is have just a little bit more of a gradual fade here on this shading. So let's do one more closest to the hairline. We'll just do a slightly darker shade. So I'm just going to pick this color here that we used under the eyes, and we'll go ahead and put that on the hair shading layer. Let's zoom out, and we'll turn off the grid, and there we have it. Well, I hope you found that helpful and are well on your way to creating your own original pixel art. Now, after you've kind of gotten the hang of it, I would encourage you to pick up Construct 2 at Scirra.com. To learn more about what we're doing here at Simplifilm, visit us at simplifilm.com. Until next time, I'm Jason Moore for Simplifilm.